Welcome back! The following tutorial guides you through the last steps of drafting your own non-disclosure agreement. This video is a good exercise to see if you've remembered everything discussed so far. However, it is not the last tutorial in this playlist, so make sure to stick around after this video. Let's continue where we left off, the others graph. The remaining nodes in this graph still need to have something added to them. Add a text to the warning node saying that if no third parties and no employees other than the representative of the buyer will gain access to the information, there will be no special clause on this in the non-disclosure agreement. The list node asks the following question: must the buyer provide the vendor with a list of people to whom the information is disclosed? Pause this video, see if you can add the question with the appropriate answer template, and click play again. Remember, the user must answer the question before going on. Done? Then your question should look a bit like this. The finish node needs 4 calculations for the right names to appear in the resulting document. For this, we use the familiar who calculation. This time, the who is based on the answers from the questions asked in the first 2 nodes of this graph. Let's see if you can make the calculations yourself. Here's the information you need to add the calculations. If the user answered yes to the others question, but no to the employees, who should refer to third parties. If the user answered no to the others question, but yes to the employees, who should refer to employees. If the user answered yes to both questions, who should refer to third parties and employees. If the user answered no to both questions, who should not refer to anything. As stated before in this tutorial, the special clause for this will not appear. Resume this video when you have added all the calculations. They should look like this. If it doesn't look the same, correct it before moving on. Also polish the application with the use of screen mode. Now that is all for this graph. Let's get back to the main decision tree. The next subgraph we will focus on is purpose. Here, we want to ask a question about what the purpose of the secrecy is. Make sure that you select an answer input that has a large enough text box and that the node has an appropriate title. This is what it should look like. If it doesn't look like this, correct it. Otherwise, move on. Now, there are only 2 subgraphs to go, both asking relatively simple questions. The first concerns termination. Here, we want to ask the following question: within how many working days should the buyer return the covert information to the vendor, if the vendor so requests? Make sure to select the right numerical answer input and choose an appropriate title. Also name the node Return of Information. It should look like this. If anything is wrong, correct it. If not, resume the tutorial. Lastly, we focus on the penalty subgraph. The use of this part of the non-disclosure agreement is to ask whether or not one would like to include a penalty clause in case of a confidentiality violation. This question is asked in the starting node of the graph. Add the question. Make sure that the user cannot go on with the application if he or she does not answer it. Also name the node penalty. This is what it should look like. The answer to this question should lead to either one of the 2 following nodes, amount or finish. Add both nodes and make sure that a positive answer to the penalty question leads to the amount node and a negative one leads to the finish node. Smoothen the user experience with the use of the screen mode and interface. Have you done that? Then this is what you should end up with. The amount node should ask 2 questions regarding the price of the penalty. The first asks how high the penalty for the buyer should be when the confidentiality agreement is violated. The second question is how high the penalty should be for every day that the violation is continued. Both amounts should be given in euros. Add the 2 questions with the appropriate answer inputs and resume this video. Done? Then something like this should be on your screen. The numbers given in the answer boxes are merely examples to steer the user in the right direction. These could be left empty, or another number could be given. Just a reminder, for longer sets of numbers, it might be better to choose a text answer input. Finally, make sure that the amount node goes on to the finish node after having answered the 2 questions. That concludes the making of all the subgraphs. We have finally arrived at the last 2 nodes in the graph. The document node will be discussed in a later tutorial. So for now, pay attention to the not applicable node. This node refers to a node in the subgraph that you have made a while ago in tutorial 4, named applicable law. A negative answer to the question called Dutch should point the decision tree to the not applicable node. The last test is to make sure that the Dutch question in the applicable law subgraph goes to the not applicable node in the main decision tree, only if one responds negatively. Pause this video, add the correct conditions, and resume once you are done. The correct condition should look like this. The only thing there is left to do is to put text in the not applicable node you have just linked to. This could be anything conclusive as long as the user knows that they cannot make this NDA if they have chosen for it not to apply to Dutch law. Now, make sure the goto is used immediately after the applicable law graph by moving it up the list in the Actions window. Now that you have had the time to practice, go on to the next tutorial. This will teach you how to give your application a more professional look by adding smart jump lists, sticky notes, and links to online information.